Today's reading is from the fourth book of the Old Testament, the book of Numbers, chapter 11. The riffraff among them had a strong craving. Even the Israelites cried again and said, "Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish we ate in Egypt for free, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Now our lives are wasting away. There is nothing but manna in front of us. I call this to mind, therefore I will wait. Certainly the faithful love of the Lord hasn't ended. Certainly God's compassion isn't through. These things are renewed every morning."
Snow-covered hills, but a landslide brought down. Oh, mirror in the sky, what is that? Can't the child within my heart rise above? And can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Afraid of a changing, 'cause I've built my life around you. But time makes you older, children get older, I'm getting older too. Well, afraid of a changing, 'cause I've built my life around you. But time makes you older, children get older, and I'm getting older too. So I take this love and I take it down. Yeah, and if you climbed a mountain and you turned around, and if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, but a landslide brought down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, the landslide will bring down.
Good job, band. I was saying as Mary Ellen started to pray, just another day in the life of 11:11 with all of our good contributions from our musicians. They're amazing. This morning, before we started here, I was talking to some of you, and I want to say at the outset that I'm very aware, because it's life, that many of you are facing changes that you don't want. All of us will and do. And I just want you to know I'm sensitive to that. In a given message, can't say everything. We hope to speak in enough generalities that it's useful now or maybe useful later. And so I just want you to know I'm aware of you. I know a lot of you now, which is my great blessing. And so I know that sometimes the changes we are facing are quite difficult. It's another good reason to be here together. It lightens the load just a little bit. So that said, I faced my own changes today. Many of you know that I get here along with a team of people about 6:45 on Sunday mornings, and we have this great, big, wonderful time. Don and Tamara are there. Mike is there for part of it. We serve breakfast to our guests who live on the streets, and it's always a really good thing. It's just a blessing that our church has vision for that, and people that want to pull that off. And so I'm sort of in charge of that, and then after that I'm in charge of the 8:30 worship service where I often give the sermon. And I know you're just riveted by my Sunday morning schedule, but I'm telling you that so I generally speaking have some expectations of how things are going to go. Well, today, not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 things went a different way than I was expecting. And so we're all right, and it's not all about the breakfast. One of them had nothing to do, 2 of them had nothing to do with the breakfast. So I'm telling you that I am witness to the fact that change is a challenge. We have to get our footing back. So here we go. Listening to Baker Street, that great song that we started with, and also Landslide, that reminds me that our efforts to change or our dealing with change can feel like riding on a stationary bike. You're pedaling, it feels like you're going nowhere. Or maybe you wonder, like the girl in the Landslide song, am I going to be able to sail these oceans of change? Well, change wouldn't be so hard if you didn't have to change with it. I mean, really. Even welcome changes, ones that we hoped for, planned for, they present some cracks in the sidewalk too. And then the changes that we know, are coming, but they're not our choices, even more we feel, thrown off a little bit. No less difficult, like I said about the songs, are the changes you plan for and you say, here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this change. And yet, in fits and starts and in backward steps, we struggle because change is hard. But change is simply not an option. Wanted and unwanted change is going to come and keep coming. And even when we've failed or not yet achieved that change we set out to make, don't worry. Things have changed because you made the plan. So take heart in that. But even though change is constant, as I have clearly laid out, I think, we have a complicated relationship to it. We resist it, we fear it, we long for it, we try to coerce it, we try to predict it, we dream of change and long for change, and we criticize it, and we mourn it, all in a day's work. Our sermon series has been, what is it to be human, or what it means to be human? It means this. It means change. That Old Testament story that Kirk read, it's such a telling commentary about human nature around the idea of change. I mean, manna from heaven, what could be better, right? And yet, the ancient Israelites had been rescued from slavery. They'd been there about 400 years, and God sent their unlikely hero, Moses. He leads them out of slavery to the land that they called the Promised Land. And when we pick up in the story where Kirk was reading us, they're having trouble adjusting to the change. I mean, it's like me digging around in the refrigerator in the vegetable drawer going, where are the onions? Where are the cucumbers? All I have is this bag of wimpy lettuce. The Israelites were free now, but they were remembering what they had. And the manna didn't seem all that pleasing. Our ancient brothers and sisters remind us of our common humanity. It's hard to change. Even the change we want is loss. So an Israeli artist wrote a song putting everyday suffering and complaining into a song. And at the end of every verse, she had the refrain, we survived Pharaoh, we can survive this. So a little perspective actually can help us with change. And it's true, how we think about change affects it all. It can expand us, it can constrict us. I think learning and relearning that life is coming together and coming apart all the time will probably be our lifelong task. But if we do learn it, that life is coming together and coming apart at all times, we might have a more authentic and graceful experience. And I choose the word authentic because how many times have you said or heard people say, I want to be real. I want an authentic experience. Well, ladies and gentlemen, change is authentic. Change is real. We've got it. We might do well to go with it, or at least around it or through it. That wisdom soundbite, everything changes, might not be welcome news, but it's real news. However, I think that when the ground is shaking under our feet, because change has come, we are facing an opportunity to learn something about ourselves and about life, and that opportunity has been opened up for us in new ways. We are actually facing an open-minded state of affairs, an open-ended state of affairs, and we get to help write the script. So I have just a few observations about change, and they are obvious. I've told you guys before that my favorite sermon title is Simple Lessons Easy to Forget, because you can hang everything under there. And so, though this is obvious and maybe sounds fairly simple, I think it's the obvious things that often trip us up. So here we go. One of the things I notice about negative change in particular is that in its blind and necessary pain, it presses on us even when we think we're ready, looks like we're not. Because we are still taken by surprise sometimes when we think we've been planning on it. When we're facing death or some other deep disappointment, we somehow want to avoid that pain or perhaps rush to a quick resolution to the pain. And like in that song, Pharaoh, we kind of get a stiff upper lip and say, well, I'm okay. I survived other things. I'm fine. I wonder if that's the best idea, to run away from pain, to pretend like I'm not really having pain with this. I'm not sure it's a good idea. As a grief coach, I try to remind people that, and I remind myself, because this is one of those simple lessons easy to forget, that trying to rush through the pain of change is not realistic in dramatic situations. So I say we should drive into the pain. Drive in there, be there, no plans to park the car and throw away the keys, but be there. Be with the pain. Take time to be with it. Take time, you're not going to like how this sounds, to make friends with the reality of our feelings about the change that's come to us. And I'm going to say more about that in just a minute. This is a good time to share our feelings and to find more than just simple words. And you may say, well, I'm not good with words. I'm not a writer. I'm not a speaker. You have more words than you think. So perhaps taking time to find words about the pain you're feeling, about whatever change it is you're facing. And also, it's a good time to listen to the words of others, because sometimes what other people say really resonates and gives us the words we're looking for. And as we've said so many times here in 11:11, one of the greatest moments, some of the greatest moments of being really human is when we resonate with others, when we find connections with others. And during pain, it's especially poignant. God may be many things. Perhaps mostly God is connection. And so when we hear the words of others and we hear in there things that we were feeling but we hadn't found the right words for yet, we get a marvelous experience at what it is to be human. And we get the chance to not be alone in the difficulty. Here's an example that I want to share with you. I am very attached to this reading. It is written by a woman named Elizabeth Harrington, and she wrote after the events of 9/11. She was actually in the city when it happened in New York. Her poem is called Normally, and she describes in it things that she normally had done. And yet, this change had happened. And so the stanza I pick up on, she is at the bus station. Normally, I don't describe them. Today, I can't help noticing the upright bodies, the feet angled as if to stay, the ticket master who hitches his pants up and waits. Usually, I look out the window, or I read the Times. Today, I notice how a little boy's hair shines in the sun, and I have the urge to feel its warmth through my palm. And I wonder about the synapses that fire beneath the scalp, or our forward-facing feet when all we want to do is go back. Elizabeth Harrington helps us touch the deep place in us for which sometimes there are no words. And because she took time to share those words, because she noticed, we understand that we aren't alone in all of the morass of our own thinking. There's a woman here at our church who is facing a change in her health. It's a crisis. And she told me that she has started to see things differently, to notice things. She said she's come alive a little bit more in some places. So her words, her perspective are so useful to me. I didn't even invite her to say that. She just told me that one day. So there's that about an observation about change. Another way to think about change is it is an opportunity to cross boundaries, and here's that phrase again, to make friends with the new reality. I like to say cross boundaries because it sounds adventurous. I like adventure. I like to say make friends with the new reality because for me at least, it is a little more expansive than just saying, I'm going to accept this. It clears out some space for me to explore, to question, to think, to listen to others, to figure out if there's more than I am currently feeling and thinking about this change, about this new arrangement of life. And so I like to say, I want to try to make friends with this new reality. Just see if that's useful for you. Crossing boundaries, to that point, I don't want to leave this out. It is a great way to think about the changes that we want to make, the goals we set for ourselves, because the reason we don't cross those boundaries is somewhere, in our heads. We already think we can't change our eating habits. We already think we can't pass that test. We already think all of these things. And so crossing boundaries is a mental exercise. That's an important thing to remember. It might be that if we cross that boundary, it's a little more tolerable than we think. I know that I personally hold a lot of unexamined ideas, and so I need to cross some boundaries there. Which leads me to another idea about change. Change is a great opportunity to realize that I don't know everything. That's funny. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. And when change comes to me, I surely get the chance to know it again. I saw this funny skit online about a guy who's trying to impress his girlfriend. Now, he's having a great difficulty in accepting and embracing, making friends with the fact that his situation is changing and he doesn't know everything. He takes her to a French restaurant. It's all beautiful. She's pretty impressed that they're there. He tells her that his French is good and that he can take care of the ordering, and she's all grateful and smiling. And so the waiter comes up. He introduces himself. Clearly, the man is a Frenchman. He goes on and he begins to greet them, and then the guy gets through the greeting. All is well so far. But then the waiter begins to talk about the courses that might be offered and the kinds of sauces that they're in and the way it's prepared and where it came from. And you watch the guy's eyes. At first, he still looks a little cocky. He still looks like he's in his game, but then his eyes change. And he is clearly getting more lost every word the waiter says. The camera shifts to the girl. She's smiling, and she suddenly says, "Oh my goodness, I feel overwhelmed." The date goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that because," and then she turns to the waiter and starts speaking in French. She discusses some course that she has a question about, and then she seems to capture herself, and she looks back at her date and says, "But of course I'll defer to you because you know more about this than I do." It is painful to watch. He begins to try to speak some French words. We're not sure he knows what any of them mean, but he does the nasally thing and, says a few words that maybe everybody knows in French. The guy was having a hard time adjusting to his changing situation. Things were not what he expected. It all ends with him looking at her, taking a nice bow and saying, "It was so nice knowing you." And he leaves her. So that funny story to say, change is an opportunity to recognize that you don't know everything. But let's bring it down here a little closer to where we might all live. Let's imagine we're in a conversation about a topic that we know some things about. Maybe we even feel confident about it. We've got lots of opinions about it. But then others begin to talk, right? And some new information is coming out. People are saying things I didn't know that, you're thinking. People are saying these things. Maybe others are disagreeing. Maybe what's being said you actually disagree with. But it is new information, and it's starting to make sense. And this is your grand opportunity to just realize and rest in the fact that you don't know. But instead, many of us are like, I don't want to change my mind. I want things to be like I thought. Practicing the fine art of not knowing is a great exercise. And every time we face change, in this case, change of knowledge, change of information, I should say, we get that chance to practice the fine art of not knowing. And it would actually rid the world of all kinds of know-it-alls, should we do it. So I recommend that. Band, I'm going to go ahead and call you guys back up here. I'm going to make one more brief observation about change and its many paths and twists and turns. The changes that we want to make, the personal ones, the habits, the attitudes that we want to make, or maybe the changes we want to be a part of for the sake of the larger world, we have to realize this about change. It is most often incremental. And that's kind of hard sometimes. It's kind of discouraging. And so I think if we're going to hang on as we work for these changes in ourselves and in the greater world, we're going to need two things. We're going to need perspective on the fact that it is incremental. And perspective is a very good teacher for us. I'd like you to hear something from Zadie Smith, an American novelist. Some of you may know her. She gives us perspective on progress and, shall we say, change. She invites us to consider the broader cycles of life that give us reason for hope in incremental change. She says, "Only the willfully blind can ignore that human history is a history of pain, brutality, murder, mass extinction, every kind of venality and cyclical horror. No land is free of it. No people are without bloodstain. No tribe is entirely innocent. But there is still this redeeming matter of incremental change. It might look small to those with an apocalyptic vision, but to she who not so long ago could not vote, could not drink from the same water fountain as her fellow citizens, or marry the person she chose, or live in the neighborhood she chose. Such incremental change feels enormous. So we have to have perspective to keep our hope in incremental change. And finally, we need a grand vision. Now, I wonder if you're like me. I get kind of tired of over-the-top words from politicians, from preachers, from advertisers. I get tired of that. And truly, grand visions need backbone and grit. But the other thing about a grand vision, and I would like us to just stay here a moment, is it's beautiful. And it strikes a chord within us that awakens us and pushes us forward and gives us hope against hope for change. And so I hope you have a grand vision. Here's the one that's in my head. It's from the book of Isaiah, actually. And Isaiah says this is God's vision. So here it is. You see, what's happened is God has called people to the mountaintop, all peoples, from everywhere, from every nation. That's said so many times in this passage. And then it says, they, the nations, they will beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up war against nation, neither will they learn war anymore. Every man shall sit under his own tree, and every woman shall safely tend her garden. A vision of changing our implements of war into garden tools. Let's keep the vision, because things might change. All right, guys, go.
Coming that I had to see. When I wake up in the morning, all I do is pray for some guidance and protection on the streets today, and an answer to the questions I ask every day. So tell me, why do the birds that he used to fly here? Tell me, why do they come to die here? All the kids said he used to run here. Tell me, why do they load the guns here? I remember in the days when we were one heart, no need to defend. I just wrap my arms around you. Don't give up, this song is for you. Hey, 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 no matter how life is today, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I said, hey, 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 no matter how life is to say, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I hold on, try to hold on. I hold on, hold on, hold on. From the tops of the buildings to the streets below, between the Wall Street banks and the empty homes, between the lines of the people standing in a row, there's a crack in the gutter where the flower grows, reminding me that everything is possible. Yeah, reminding me that nothing is impossible. You gotta live for the one that you love, you know. You gotta live for the life that you live, you know. I say, hey, 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 no matter how life is today, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I say, hey, 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 no matter how life is today, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I hold on, try to hold on. I hold on, try to hold on. Until the morning comes again, I will remain with you, my friend, and we will ride into the sun, go to the place where it begun, and we will live the life and cry another day. Don't let nobody ever tell you that it couldn't be done. Don't let nobody ever tell you that we couldn't be one. Don't let nobody ever tell you that it shouldn't be so. Don't let nobody ever tell you you're the only one. Hey, 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 no matter how life is today, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I say, hey, 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 no matter how life is today, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I say, hey, 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 no matter how life is today, there's just one thing that I gotta say. I won't let another moment slip away. I say, hey, 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 no matter
Well, it's been great to be together today. Would you like to stand and we'll have our blessing and we'll head out? Do pay attention to the announcement sheets in their back. There's always so much good stuff going on at our church. We're the daughter of the Mother Church, as you know. And I hope you'll watch for what's going on there that might interest you or that you might get involved in to help with. Also, I do want to tell you one kind of special thing that's coming October 27th, right? October 27th, that's right. It's the 90th anniversary of when they first broke ground here to build the Mother Church. And so there's going to be a big celebration. There'll be church at 9:30 and 11 in the sanctuary, and the band's going to play. They're going to meld us all together. So we won't be seeing you here that day. We'll be seeing you over there that day. So let's go. Let's, all be there and support that. There's this thing in the Old Testament that says when you get to the Promised Land, you are going to be warming your hands by fires that you did not build. That's kind of how it is to be in this church. It was built 90 years ago before we were here, and we are the benefactors of so much good work that goes on out of this place. So I hope you'll come and celebrate and keep that in mind. But now let's say a blessing together. Holy One, we give thanks for all that's good in the world, and we pray that we might lean into that. We also pray that we will find strength and courage from our life together to amend our ways if we should, and to forgive ourselves and others of the things that cause us so much difficulty in life. May we be agents of change when it's time. May we rest in change if we must. In it all, we know that we are alone and are not alone, and so we give thanks. Amen.